Welcome to Lessons in History. The LO today is, what were the causes of the First World War? Typically, these can be broken down into 6 different causal factors, and we will be going through each in turn. But feel free to jump to the cause that you are finding most tricky, as these are in no particular order. Nationalism. We can define nationalism as a love for your own country. To get the higher marks, think of nationalism in the context of Germany looking out for Germany, Britain looking out for Britain, and Serbia looking out for Serbs. The leader of Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm II, looked jealously to the other European nations, particularly Britain, for her vast empire and navy. That's why, in 1897, he began a policy of Weltpolitik, or world policy in English. The idea was that Germany should be respected on the world stage, have an empire of her own, and a proud navy. This is why Germany becomes more active in international affairs. They sought an alliance with neighbour Austria-Hungary and supported them in key international events such as the Bosnian Crisis. Weltpolitik also had a role for the growing of the German navy. Now, any time a nation makes naval changes, the British become alarmed. A rise in German naval power might be a potential threat to the British Empire and the great sums of trade and money that came with it. In this regard then, the growth of German nationalism under the Kaiser and Weltpolitik increased tensions. If you want to impress the examiner, there is another way you will be able to show how nationalism contributed to the cause of the First World War. And for this, we need to understand the makeup or composition of the Austro-Hungarian Empire and its close neighbours, specifically Serbia. The union of Austria and Hungary took place in 1867, and whilst true, the majority of the population were either Austrian or Hungarian, there were still several different ethnic groups living in Austria-Hungary. There were Czechs, Slovaks, Serbians, Bosnians, Croats, Poles. There was in fact 15 different languages spoken in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Many of these groups wanted independence. They wanted to break free, form their own country, and stand on their own 2 feet. Keeping the empire united, therefore, was extremely difficult for the leader, Emperor Franz Josef, the uncle of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It is vital that you understand this element of nationalism, or love for your own country. Serbs that lived in Austria-Hungary did not classify themselves as Austro-Hungarian, but in fact, Serbian. As such, they wanted a united Serbia where all Serbs or Slavs could stand on their own 2 feet and not be part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In both of these instances then, nationalism can be seen as a long-term brewing cause of the First World War. The alliance systems. The best way to think of the alliance system's contribution to the outbreak of the First World War is to think of 2 rival gangs. In short, the larger the gang, the more likely it is one of their members is going to cause trouble. Do not trouble yourself trying to remember the exact dates for each agreement. Instead, have a solid chronological understanding of the timeline and why each respective country made the decisions they did. There were 2 alliance systems: the Triple Alliance, sometimes referred to as the Central Powers, and the Triple Entente. In 1879, a dual alliance between Austria and Germany formed as Germany was looking to isolate France. In 1882, Italy joined, but reneged once war broke out. Since 1870–71, with France being isolated following the defeat in the Prussian War, seeking an ally, from 1888, France began to invest in Russian infrastructure, and the 2 sides signed the Franco-Russian alliance in 1892. It stated that if one country of the Triple Alliance attacked France or Russia, its ally would attack the aggressor. Also, if one nation of the Triple Alliance mobilised its army, France and Russia would mobilise. Britain had followed the policy of splendid isolationism, a desire to keep out of European affairs and instead focus on her empire commitments. But with Weltpolitik in full swing, in 1904, Britain settled long-standing disputes with France over competing colonial claims in Africa, signing the Entente Cordiale, also known as the Friendly Agreement or Friendly Understanding. This showed that both countries respected each other's colonial rights. To be clear, this was not a military agreement. Instead, it was a simple way of settling old disputes. In 1907, the Triple Entente was complete when Britain signed an alliance with Russia. However, there was no specific three-way agreement between Britain, France and Russia. Even after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June 1914, neither of Britain's agreements with France or Russia guaranteed she would ally with the countries in the event of a European war. However, when Germany executed the Schlieffen Plan, thus violating the Treaty of London, Britain declared war on Germany. Troubles in the Balkans, and more specifically the Bosnian Crisis of 1908, is, in my opinion, the greatest contributing factor that led to the outbreak of the First World War. It combines so many issues that if you can show causation as to how the events not only happened, but lit the fuse for the explosions that were about to descend on Europe 6 years later, the examiner will be impressed. Of course, any of these causes may be argued as the most significant. Reach your own judgment. From the 1300s, the Ottoman Empire grew to dominate most of Southeast Europe and the northern tips of Africa. As you can see, the entire Balkan Peninsula was under Ottoman control, or nowadays we would refer to it as Turkish. This control lasted for centuries. To be clear, there were no independent countries such as Serbia, Bosnia or Greece. It was all Ottoman. The Ottoman Empire had, however, started to lose influence from the late 1800s. The countries such as Greece and Serbia gained their independence. During this time, however, Bosnia was legally still part of the Ottoman Empire, but was administered and policed by Austria-Hungary. Huge tension was created in 1908 when a new government in Turkey, led by a group calling themselves the Young Turks, took charge and promised reform. Worried that this new group would revive the Ottomans back to their former glory, Austria-Hungary annexed Bosnia. They stole land from the Turks. In a way, you could phrase it as picking their pockets. Bosnia now belonged to Austria-Hungary. This outraged Serbia, as after all, 4 million ethnic Serbs lived in Bosnia, and their dream of a unified Serbian peoples took a hit. Russia, Serbia's ally, was outraged. But with a powerful Germany supporting the actions of Austria-Hungary, when they told Russia to back down, they did. Interesting to note that neither Britain or France came to Russia's defence. However, and this is something that is very important to know, the Russians promised to never back down again. This key mindset was vital in the days and weeks that followed the assassination in 1914. Another, even more pressing consequence of the 1908 Bosnian crisis, the Black Hand Gang was formally established with the explicit intention of uniting all Slavic people. Their motto, union or death. For these two reasons, the promise by the Russians to never back down again, and the formation of the Black Hand, I would argue, is the single greatest contributing factor to the outbreak of the First World War. But, like any good history teacher will tell you, have your own opinion, be confident with it, and disagree with me. Imperialism. A desire for empire and the prestige that came with it was a key driving force behind many of the actions of the great powers of Europe in the early 1900s. One of the best examples to use regarding the Kaiser's Weltpolitik or expansionist mindset will be to cast our minds to the two crises in Morocco, first in 1905 and the second in 1911. Germany was building up its own African empire, and the Kaiser wanted to show that Germany was an important power too. The French had made plans to take control of independent Morocco. The Kaiser had other ideas. He went to Morocco to the city of Tangier, he rode in on a great white horse and made a speech that supported Moroccan independence. He furthermore called for an international conference involving the great powers to settle this issue in 1906. The Algeciras Conference was called. Only Austria-Hungary supported Germany, and with the recently signed Entente Cordiale, Britain supported France, further cementing their relationship. The Kaiser wanted to be taken seriously, but in fact was humiliated. Germany started to look more menacing to the British, and as a result, the following year in 1907, Britain signed a military agreement with Russia. In 1911, Morocco saw another crisis. France tried to take over Morocco again, following a series of riots. In response, the Kaiser sent a gunboat called the Panther to the deep sea port known as Agadir. Britain once again was alarmed, and worried that Germany was trying to control access to the Mediterranean. Another conference was called, and once again, Britain stood firm with France. Germany was left humiliated once again. Britain, at this point, was very alarmed about German intentions. The naval arms race. Britain kept a close eye on naval activities since ruling the waves since defeating the French and Spanish at the Battle of Trafalgar in the early 1800s. Britain had a very clear naval policy known as the two-power standard. In practice, this meant that the Royal Navy was required to be more powerful than the next two navies combined, just in case they were to ever join forces. At the turn of the 1900s, the next two largest navies were Germany and France, and these two were certainly not teaming up. The naval arms race was very much an issue of pride. The sad aspect of this, Kaiser Wilhelm believed passionately that by expanding the German navy would help gain respect from other nations, most importantly Britain. However, in reality, the British deemed German naval growth as a direct threat to both empire and trade. In direct response to German expansion, the British began growing her already powerful navy. HMS Dreadnought was launched in 1906. The Dreadnought made all previous warships outdated. She had steam turbine engines, making her the fastest ship, capable of doing 24 miles an hour, certainly faster than any threatening submarine. She carried 10 12-inch guns. Her biggest and closest competitor carried only 4. When it was leaked to the British public that the Germans were trying to outbuild the British, the public demanded that the government plans for 4 battleships to be built in 1909 should be doubled. Slogans such as "We want 8 and we won't wait" became a common war cry, particularly in the media. This causal factor has long been contested. Was the Kaiser truly innocent in his desires of seeking respect? Or did he have an aggressive ambition? The British interpreted this naval growth as a threat to her empire and trade which followed. The naval race had seen Britain and Germany directly compete against each other, as both knew that they are expanding their navies because the other nation was. The assassination. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand on the streets of Sarajevo, Bosnia, was a terrorist act. On June 28, 1914, a Serbian-led group called the Black Hand carried out the killing of the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. Although not organised by the Serbian government, the Black Hand was supported by Serbian military intelligence. The assassin was an 18-year-old student named Gavrilo Princip. Many labelled this as the main cause of the war. But then why did war not break out the following day or week? What followed in the months to come, known as the July Crisis, was a series of ultimatums and threats. Germany gave what became the famous blank cheque of support to Austria-Hungary in whatever it decided to do. Russia, having said that they would not back down again following the Bosnian Crisis, stood with Serbia. On July 28th, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Germany then declared war on Russia on August 1st, and on the 3rd of August Germany declared war on France, and August 4th invaded Belgium, thus putting the Schlieffen Plan into action. Britain declared war on Germany on August 4th, stating that Belgium's neutrality and thus the Treaty of London had been violated. Europe was now at war. Thanks for making it to the end. I've put some practice questions up should you wish to give these a go. Leave any questions you have in the comments if you're unsure on any of the content and what you would like to see next. Remember, these videos are here for your benefit, so if you liked what you see, you know what to do. And if you didn't, then tell me how I may make them better. Thanks for watching Lessons in History, and I'll see you in the next video.